sort of a late night of news last night, and a lot to talk about this morning, though I'll try to keep it brief, and hope you're waking up to a good one so far. My son, who tells me to keep my videos short, actually told me to get on the video this morning. So I feel like that's a good change. Oh, hi. Hi. What's going on? My 2-year-old just walked in with wild hair. Let me just show you what our table looks like, just so you can really get the full effect of what's happening. Little crayons, right? A little Moana, little trays.
This is for Daddy.
That's really sweet. Eggs. Liberty. Here, Liberty, this is yours. You want some eggs? Oh, wait, that's Trace's. Yeah, so there you go. See how we solve disputes in our household? This, just so everybody knows, we're just going to do, just because all we have to do is talk about President Trump, the border talk. I also just want to do a help because I noticed as I'm talking to you that my eye makeup's still on from last night. Move out of this chair. Do you want to know the secret from behind the scenes of network news? That the best makeup remover is not the expensive stuff that you can buy in the drugstore. It's baby wipes. Everyone should know that. Wasting money. Also to get stains off your clothes. You don't want to use the ones that have scents on, a scent. You want the sensitive one. Get anything out of your clothes and get your eye makeup off. I'm just gonna get this done because I can't talk to you this way. I can't. Truth is, I was up really late working on the site and then clearly didn't wash my face good enough. So hey, I don't need the musical background for a second, okay? Give me a second. All right. Whew, I feel better already. You guys are really helping me out this morning. Okay, so here's the deal. I'm going to talk about President Trump in a second, but I would like to just include a couple things that are happening around the world because literally it's difficult to find anything other than a talk about border security and the president and the Democrats. And quite frankly, I've had it about up to here. So I just want to point out a couple things to you. Remember we were talking yesterday about Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, who's making a tour of the Middle East. There was a question of whether or not whether or not he was going to visit 8 or 9 countries. And that's because we weren't sure where he was going to stop because they don't always talk about that, but he ended up stopping in Iraq. And that's really significant because the president was just in Iraq. So you're seeing a lot of visits to Iraq. The Energy Secretary, Rick Perry, was just in Iraq. So there's a concerted effort to have American presence in the ground in Iraq. And one of the reasons for this, and I just learned this today, I didn't realize that Iran supplies a lot of electricity resources to Iraq. And one of the things that our Energy Secretary is talking about is getting Iraq into energy independence. Because the more that Iraq is dependent on Iran, the more influence Iran has over that country. And one of the things that America doesn't want is Iran having expanding influence in the Middle East. And we're seeing that. Why do we not want that? Well, we know that Iran has been designated a state sponsor of terror, invests in different terrorist organizations, has anti-American sentiment, has long suspected of wanting to develop nuclear weapons. And so Iran just simply is not our friend. So we don't want to see them expand in the Middle East. And part of what Secretary Pompeo is doing over there is setting the groundwork again with our allies, reiterating that. So just want to mention that he was in Iraq, and then today he's going to be in Cairo, Egypt. Cairo, Egypt is interesting because that's where President Obama at the beginning of his administration made a big speech about his goals for the Middle East. He was criticized by some for apologizing for America's efforts in the Middle East. Others love the speech, clearly. There's always a difference of opinion. There's the thinking that Secretary Pompeo is going to deliver an address that sort of maps out the priorities for America in the Middle East. He's clearly not a president, but interesting to use Cairo again as a site of that if that indeed does happen. So I want you to know that. While there's a lot of focus on border security here at home, national security, as we know, is a big issue, and that's why I always want to keep you informed about what's happening in the Middle East. Where we have invested trillions of dollars, right? Okay, so that's going on. The second thing I want you to know close to home is, and this is getting more and more attention, that there could be a teacher strike at one of the largest school districts in America in LA. And it looks like that, from what I can gather, the major debate is over class size and resources. Not necessarily teacher salary, which is one of the things that, hey guys, shh. Not just teacher salary, which was something that in West Virginia, if you remember last year, there was a big strike in West Virginia. Teachers ended up getting a salary raise after being out of the classroom for almost 2 weeks. It looks like, according to the teachers union, they're expecting a strike tomorrow. Whether or not negotiations at the last minute pull everything together, we'll see. They're playing with toys, with little animals. I would move away, but I kind of need my computer for this. Okay, here's what I want to tell you about President Trump's speech. A couple things. Please check out our card today on our website. I tried to highlight 3 of the moments in the speech that I think are the most significant, and I also included the Democrat response. I watched the address on multiple networks, ABC, PBS, and Fox. I watched their reaction, and then I've gone in and read, whether it's the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Associated Press, the reactions to the speech. One of the things that I think you should know about, you're going to hear a lot about today, is there are the, guys, no fighting. Hey, it's too rough. It's too rough. I know, but it's because you guys are playing so hard and so good. So just, wait, hey. None of that.
Scratched me there.
I know, guys. Can we just?
But she scratched me right there.
I think you're both gonna survive.
Scratched me there.
Again, sometimes I think they just sort of play out what we're seeing on a national level. Okay, stop. No shooting your sister. You know that's a rule. You know that's a rule. Okay. One of the things that I'm noticing is the fact-checking that's going on at the president. I know too much. I'm trying to wrap it up, but you guys are kind of, you're making a lot of noise. So give me a second, okay? So here's what I'm noticing. There's a lot of fact-checking of the president trying to prove him wrong on many of the different points that he says. And while the fact-checking is important, I also think there's almost a missing of a larger picture. And so I'll get to that in a second. The one thing that looks like the Democrats and the Republicans agree on is that there is a humanitarian concern at the southern border. The president calls it a crisis. The Democrats say that he's manufacturing a crisis. And what they're pointing to is saying, well, listen, border apprehensions are not as high historically as they've ever been. A wall is not going to stop drugs from coming into our country. And, how he's painting the picture of illegal immigrants is wrong. Those all can be fine arguments. The president yesterday made a broader argument, not just about a border wall, but about border security in general. And so some of the things he said, for example, is that we need border security to keep drugs out. And I just want to mention this as a fact check. The Associated Press came out today and said, well, a border wall is not going to keep out drugs, because many of the drugs come in just through our ports of entry, through a car. You've seen the videos. You know what I'm talking about. You see those crazy, viral videos where Border Patrol agents open the trunk of a car and there's, all these drugs, that have been hidden in the car. So, but the Associated Press is fact-checking the president on something that he didn't say. He didn't say that the border wall is necessary to keep out these drugs. He actually said that border security is needed to keep out these drugs. So it's almost like the press is going back to the original argument, which was what the president said before about the need for a border wall. But the argument that he made last night was about border security overall and why we need it, because of drugs, because of a humanitarian crisis, women and children in harm's way coming across the border. And so I find that really interesting. It was like instantly, as soon as the president talked, everyone wanted to fact check him, but they weren't really listening to what he was saying last night. So that's not in defense of the president in his argument, but as someone that's sort of outside the media, and you're going to be hearing this a lot today, I want you to really listen for, you know, what did the president say about border security versus a border wall? And are people fact-checking him on a border wall or the plan overall for border security? I hope that makes sense. So just, you gotta, it's just like it seems that people are so quick to disprove him that I don't know if they're really listening to what he said last night. And yes, what he said last night is a little bit different than what he said in the past. Hey, hey, hey. Hey, give it back to her, please. Or put it in your room.
I want a bag. I want a bag, Mama.
Okay, okay, okay.
I don't want a drum. I don't like dress.
I know. How about this one? Look at this.
I don't like that one.
Okay. Do you want to come sit with me? You just want to be angry? Okay.
You stop looking at me. You stop.
I'm not. Okay,
looking at me.
okay. Sometimes she wakes up on the wrong side of the bed, you know. Okay. This is probably not the most effective coffee talk that I've ever had. I'm not looking at you, I promise. She's 2. What is she going to be like when she's 16? I don't know. Okay. So, what do I think the takeaway is from last night's speech? I think the president made it clear that he doesn't want to necessarily build a wall, that he's open to a steel barrier. Democrats say that's not something that they have necessarily advocated for, but the reason why the president mentioned that is that in 2006, many Democrats voted for a barrier
Mommy,
like a fence.
trace this
And so,
his foot.
I thank you. So he's trying to look like he's making a concession, and the reason why he's doing that is because they're having another meeting today. And remember, if this shutdown continues into the weekend, then it'll be the longest in American history. I don't know if last night's speech or the response moved the needle in any way, gets us closer to a solution, but I would be really curious about what you think about the speech. I provided a link in our Insta story so you could check it out. I provided a link on our website, smarternews.com, so you could rewatch it on C-SPAN. I think C-SPAN is really good to watch on because, good baby, because there's no reaction. You know, it's just the speech. If you have a second, I would watch it. And then if you can, you know, you could look at some of the fact-checking that's going on today. Again, I almost feel like there needs to be a President Trump translator. The media seems to latch on to the very specific semantics, where the president, as you know, sort of talks in these big idea, you know, I don't want to say exaggerations, and sometimes he does, you know, the biggest, most beautiful wall. But he was talking last night about border security overall. The media was latching on to some very specific things to try to disprove him. One of the other ways was he was talking about crimes. The president spoke about crimes by illegal immigrants. The media came out and said, and this is in general, PBS did this, ABC did this, not ABC, the Associated Press did this, said, well, illegal immigrants don't commit crimes at the same level as Americans. But the president wasn't asserting that. The president was asserting that there have been some illegal immigrants that have committed crimes, and that is true. But he wasn't saying they were proportionately worse than other Americans. I think that's an important point that we could all talk about later, but that's not what he was saying last night. And so it becomes kind of this thing like, okay, well, you know, if there were 100,000 crimes by illegal immigrants, then would it be a problem? If there's 10 crimes by illegal immigrants, is that a problem? You know, how do you measure when it becomes a problem? I don't know the answer to that. I'd be curious what you guys think about it, because that seems to be the argument that's being made. One of the arguments that's not being disputed is the main issue that brought us to this point overall, which has been the number of children that are crossing the border illegally with adults. The president mentioned that last night. You know that's been the heart of the debate going back to this past summer and the detention of some of these children. And no one is disputing that fact by the president, where he said there is about 20,000 children that have come over so far this year or this past month. I believe what he just said. So that's not in dispute. No one's taking up that issue, even though that's the issue that many were the most concerned about initially. So anyhow, I just think I think it's worth it to take a look at the speech. The Democrat response was different than the president's speech. Remember, the president is speaking from the Oval Office to the American people. He made an argument for his side, but he didn't necessarily take on the Democrats. When you see the Democrat response, they did directly take on the president. They said that he was using fear over fact, that it was cruel, and that there was malice intent. And those are the accusations that they're using against the president. You've heard this before over the last several weeks and years. So that was their plan of attack. Wasn't necessarily to attack the idea of border security. They were saying, well, we agree with border security too. We just disagree with the tactics. And by the way, this guy's no good. And that's what they said. There's your quick synopsis. So I see some of you are saying you should fact check the fact checking. You know what? There's a thing with this fact checking. I get the need to want to do it. And I understand, especially with this administration that does not speak flawlessly, that there is... Your tummy is full, okay. There's a desire to fact check everything. But at times, I'm more into like, well, what's the big idea? You know, what's the big takeaway? The big takeaway is the president wants border security. He thinks that he can get this across using the government shutdown in part to accomplish something that's a big part of his agenda. He thinks now is the time, and the truth is, politically, it probably is the only time. We get into the later part of the year, you get into appropriations again, budget appropriations again, and this is not gonna happen, right? Then you get into the presidential election for 2020. So this probably is politically the time that the president has to push this through if he wants to. In the meantime, the Democrats are doing everything they can to divorce it from the shutdown. They want to have a debate over border security that is not tied to the government shutdown. The president doesn't want to lose that leverage. So there's a little bit in it, a little bit of politics for you. Sorry, this has been long today. But I felt you know, there are times that I look at the media coverage and I don't like just being overly critical of it because I feel like that sounds like a broken record. But last night I was surprised at the instant intent to say everything that the president's saying is not true, and not to kind of focus on the big picture argument. Present it to the people and let you guys kind of make up your own mind. I was really surprised, and I haven't watched a lot of evening news in a long time, so that was part of it. And you know, I'll be curious what you guys think when you can actually, when you can get a chance to watch the speech. Okay. Hope you guys have a great day. Remember that these will be helpful to you at some point in your life. I have no fighting toddlers. It's going to be okay. Okay? Have a good one. Liberty, would you like to say goodbye? No. Trace, would you like to say goodbye? No. Oh, rude. No, too. I'll work on that. Okay, you guys. I'll talk to you later. You can come say goodbye. Do you want to say goodbye? Well, okay. Well, you can't see them. I know. It's weird. She's giving me the side eye like, what?